So, good afternoon. I'm Janico, our host. Welcome to the informational webinar on the Marin County Civil Grand Jury. Both today's speakers and I are past civil grand jurors and now members of the Marin chapter of the California Grand Jury Association, a volunteer nonprofit group, and our Zoom host today. Two of the chapter's main purposes are to disseminate knowledge of the county to the county's residents about the civil grand jury's basic workings and purposes, and to find a new applicant pool from all walks of life to carry forward the jury's important community work. The grand jury is currently now taking applications for the next 5 weeks or so, and we hope you will apply. It is an eye-opening learning experience. Before I introduce our speaker, a bit about today's webinar. The following presentation will have a question and answer session at its end. You are welcome to submit written questions at any time during the presentation by clicking the Q&A icon at the bottom middle of your screen. Following the presentation, questions will be read and answered. And for your information, the chat and the raised hand functions are now discontinued. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Jack Nixon, a past grand juror and foreman. Good afternoon, Jack.
Good afternoon, Janico. As Janico said, my name is Jack Nixon. I served as a foreman of the 2014-15 grand jury, and I've also served 4 years as a planning commissioner for the county and 8 years as a San Rafael city councilman. However, that's not the point. The point I want to make, I will bring up on the screen. I believe that serving for 12 months as a Marin civil grand juror may be the most vital and satisfying civic endeavor that a citizen of Marin can pursue. Grand jury investigations are critical to the civic health of our county, for they bring to light needed improvements in how we govern ourselves and how we spend our tax dollars. No other independent institution has that oversight ability, combined with subpoena power and complete confidentiality. So let's move on to how the grand jury works. The agenda for today is the following. What's the civil grand jury? What's the job of the grand jury? How it works and why its work is so important. The grand jury is composed of 19 jurors, including 1 foreperson and a foreperson pro tem, which is the same as saying a vice president. They serve for 1 year from July 1 to June 30th. You meet weekly at the Civic Center in a private room or via video meeting. Unless you're invited, no one but the jurors are allowed in, not even the cleaning staff. What the grand jury is not, it is not a criminal grand jury. A criminal grand jury is called by the district attorney, and if called and then impaneled, individuals are required to serve. The purpose of the civil grand jury is to investigate and make recommendations for improvements in local governments of Marin. It's the only independent watchdog investigative body for Marin governments. And I stress again, it has subpoena power. Each of the 58 counties is authorized by the California Penal Code to have a civil grand jury. How is it selected? Well, you fill out an application. You mail it in to the civil grand jury at the Civic Center. The deadline is April 22. Applicants are interviewed and then selected by the presiding judge of the Superior Court. In June, the judge draws the names of 18 applicants who will be jurors. The remaining 11 are alternates. All are sworn in at that time. The job of a civil grand jury is to investigate local government matters of civil concern. You identify issues, you research issues, and you report on your findings and recommendations. Now, what's the scope of the civil grand jury? Well, it's limited to Marin County. But how many local governments does Marin have? First of all, you know there's a county government. There are 11 cities. But did you know that altogether, there are over 150 different local governments? That includes all of the community services districts, the flood control districts, the healthcare districts, the school districts, the mosquito abatement district, and so on. How do you get results? Well, your findings and recommendations go to elected or appointed officials for required responses. And I say required because it says in the law that a response is required. The second way to get results is through community awareness and concerns. To that end, the Marin IJ has been extremely helpful in publishing our reports or news about our reports, and that brings it to everybody's attention. But keep in mind that results take time. Some resistance to change may be inevitable, so it may not happen right away. Whatever we recommend may not happen right away. What are the rewards of being a civil grand juror? Well, the main thing is the satisfaction in contributing to the improvement of local government. In addition, you learn and you're involved in serious issues about our local government. You also have access to elected officials, I should say easy access, and you find solutions to civic problems. You will take some field trips. You are required as a grand juror to visit all 3 jails in Marin County: the San Quentin Jail, the Marin County Jail, and the Juvenile Hall. Even though San Quentin is a federal prison, or is it state, whatever, but you are required to visit it. You may want to look into the SMART train, the sewage treatment plants, the hospital districts, the homeless shelters, and so on. Anywhere an investigation might take you, or where the jury wishes to become more knowledgeable, that's where you go. What are the requirements to be a civil grand juror? Well, you got to be 18 or older, you got to be a U.S. citizen, and you have to have lived in Marin for 1 year. It's highly desirable that you have computer skills, at least to the extent of emails and word processing. You must be prepared to maintain confidentiality for the rest of your life as to what goes on in the jury room. You must be able to serve for 12 months starting July 1. But what does the grand jury really need? Desirable and often necessary traits include working well with others, listening to understand, respecting other opinions, being open-minded, being humble, not having an axe to grind, and being impartial. Get the facts rather than opinions. The process for choosing a civil grand jury includes, again, this is redundant, but I'd like to bring it up again. Applicants will be contacted after April 22. The interview process in May will include interviews with former jurors and a group exercise in choosing an investigation subject, not for real, but just for practice. Then ultimately you get down to where there's 30 people involved, 30 are selected, the judge picks a foreperson, and then a drawing is held for 18 jurors, and the remaining 11 will be alternates who, I might add, are often used. You will be immediately sworn in. In-depth training begins in July. This includes discussions with local government officials, a group dynamics practice dealing with divergent views, a review of legal responsibilities, investigation and report writing techniques, and computer applications if needed or desired. How does the grand jury get organized? Jurors create and serve on committees of their choosing, and you form your own committees. Some examples of past committees that have been chosen are Law and Justice, Environment and Transportation, Education, Health and Human Welfare, Admin and Finance, and so on. How topics are chosen is very important because that's how anything is decided in the grand jury. It requires a vote of 12 of the 19 people. That's called a plenary, and 12 is a supermajority, and you must have that to get anything done. The second way that you might have an investigation is through a request for investigation from the public. But again, it still requires 12 votes to decide to go ahead and do the investigation. Thirdly is previous grand jury reports. Suppose you find out that a report was not satisfactorily responded to and nothing came of it, and it should be done again with more emphasis. Again, it takes 12 votes to do that. But those are the ways you develop topics. Now, how are the facts determined to be facts and not opinion? Online research is primary, as are documents and in-person interviews. Triangulation is simply a fancy name for getting approval of the source of information from more than one source. In other words, it takes at least two people to confirm what you've heard, or two forms of interviews or documents. If warranted, the findings and recommendations are put into a written report. And I say if warranted because you may find after you've done all this work that there is no report to be made. So you have to keep that in mind. So why be a civil grand juror? The goal is to improve your local government, your county, your cities, your special districts. And secondly, is to learn in depth about local government and current issues. To interview officials, law enforcement officers, and community leaders, and take eye-opening field trips. And finally, you get to know and to interact with 18 other interesting people. And that's for sure. Reports that brought awareness and attention to major problems include a report on public pension enhancements when there was not sufficient legal notice to the public, the Wind Cup project and how it happened. This was a report that was created because there was a request for investigation from the people in Corte Madera, and they accused the city of bribery and corruption. So we did a thorough investigation, and we did not find that they did anything wrong at all, but it needed to be cleared. The air needed to be cleared on that. Another subject was human trafficking in Marin. And then more recently, the grand jury recommended that the Fire Authority of Marin be created, and it was voted on, and you all approved it. So we're asking that you apply to the Marin Civil Grand Jury. Deadline is April 22, and for more information, you can visit the link. If you are chosen, you'll have the unique experience of a lifetime and the honor and privilege of being a Marin Civil Grand Juror. And again, I'm going to reiterate and read this to you. Serving for 12 months as a Marin Civil Grand Juror may be the most vital and satisfying civic endeavor that a citizen of Marin can pursue. Grand jury investigations are critical to the civic health of our county, for they bring to light needed improvements in how we govern ourselves and how we spend our tax dollars. No other independent institution has that oversight ability, combined with subpoena power and complete confidentiality. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Hello, Jack. Yes, there is one question. The first is, can jurors take vacations? Then they take breaks?
The answer is yes, you can do that, but it's not recommended that you take a 3-week or 4-week vacation during the 1 year that you serve, because it does create problems for the foreperson.
And the next question would be, what is the time commitment for grand jury meetings?
For the meetings themselves, once a week for the plenary, plus once a week probably for each committee that you serve on, and you may serve on anywhere from 1 to 3 committees. You should figure out 10 hours to 20 hours a week on the average.
It is a commitment, I must say, but during this past pandemic, a lot of the meetings, in fact, most, if not all of the meetings at certain time were done over Zoom. So I am not sure how the next jury will want to work, whether they will do in-person and Zoom. Maybe one committee would decide that they could do Zoom and meet once a month. You know, really the juries have a lot of leeway in how they want to construct themselves and how they work.
That's true, and that points out that everything is determined by 12 of the 19 people, at least 12 votes. You make your own decisions on a grand jury.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I do have the raised hand, so if you do want a question, to actually verbally say a question, I can open that up for an audio for you. I hope we've answered all your questions, and you really have an interest in joining the grand jury. It is definitely an experience that you will not forget. And I, for years, decades, had worked outside the county Monday through Friday. And then at another point in my life, I decided to do this work on the jury, and it really made me go, oh, this is where I've been living. Oh my gosh. And I learned so much.
That's right. It's a real eye-opening experience.
It
It
definitely
really is.
makes a change.
And very gratifying.
So I think we can thank you all for attending, and if you have more interest, there is our website, the association's website. I'll give you that information and also probably put it back up on the screen, which you may have seen flash around in the very beginning. And that is the World Wide Web, and www.mccgja.org. And there is a menu at the top. If you go to the civil grand jury, there is a drop down there, and about the civil grand jury will answer a lot of questions, have a lot of links to the county website, and be very informative. There's other links on that, another page about the grand jury in the news, and that will give you listings of articles and actually the reports. So I do hope you investigate that site. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Goodbye.